a comedic horror series whose first season aired in 2015 on Fox. Its second season aired in 2016, but I have not seen it yet so that I can focus on analyzing the first season purely in its own context. Unfortunately, it was not renewed for 2017. Taking place in a college setting with a focus on a sorority, the series follows the sorority sisters as they deal with the tyrannical presence of their spoiled, racist sorority president, attempts from the resentful dean of students to shut them down, an overprotective father, the overbearing house mother, a busybodying security guard, jackass fraternity brothers, and oh yeah, the little matter of an unknown villain in a devil costume killing them off one by one.
Like a Friends episode, but someone's, trying to murder all the friends.
Scream Queens is the brainchild of Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan, who made the series along with Brad Falchuk. The three of them worked closely together and wrote all of the episodes of the show, either together or individually, which gives the show a very consistent handling. Ryan Murphy is the creative vision behind a number of TV shows, including American Horror Story and Glee. American Horror Story is most obviously relevant due to its horror connection, but I would argue that Glee is a closer relative in its quirky ensemble humor, nods to diversity, and casting a satirical gaze on academia. The creators of Scream Queens also made Glee as a team project, but as showrunner, Ryan Murphy is credited with all of Glee's successes, as well as its problems, and he resumed that role when he moved on to Scream Queens, for which the controversial aspects only intensified scrutiny of him as a content creator.
Those things don't work. Yes, they do. Didn't you see the movie? The movie Ouija? No, no one did.
Scream Queens is an homage to the horror genre. It uses a mass killer plot device similar to Michael Myers from the Halloween series, with a revenge motivation similar to that of Mrs. Voorhees from Friday the 13th, who wears a red devil costume similar to that of the killer in Hellbent. There are various references to horror films scattered throughout the show, including The Shining, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Panic Room, Psycho, and more. Many of the characters are horror nerds who go out of their way to pay homage to the films themselves, when they're not just outright watching the films in the show.
Geez, there's a little movie called Terminator you girls might want to consider watching.
The weirdest incarnation of this is with the stereotypical mean popular girl characters, who are materialistic, narcissistic, fashion-obsessed, dim-witted bullies who love horror films.
She looks like Jason Voorhees.
No, Jason was deformed since birth. She looks like Freddy Krueger.
It's derivative of Scream in the sense of everyone being aware of horror movies and being able to identify cliches occurring around them. But it's taken to an extreme. The joke of Scream is that the characters in the horror film are not the typical horror film characters who have never seen a horror film and are instead like us, who have seen horror films, and they can analyze their setting in a way that we might with our knowledge.
This is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare.
Scream Queens doesn't just give us characters that look like us, it gives us characters from a bizarro world where horror films are mainstream entertainment, and almost everyone is a horror nerd. A probable influencing factor to this is that the Scream television series, which I have not yet seen, premiered earlier that year with a similar premise of a mass killer stalking a group of teenagers over a town incident occurring 20 years prior, and Scream Queens needed to be distinguished from it. The show briefly goes beyond horror films to pay homage to urban legends and folklore. The 9th episode dramatizes and proceeds to spoof the legend that Snopes calls Backseat Jiver, about a scary truck driver just trying to warn a woman that a killer is in her backseat. This homage to folklore extends to Japanese legends, and given the show's focus on the Greek system, they of course bring in the kappa, romanized as K-A-P-P-A, and pronounce it like they would pronounce the Greek letter as kappa. Interestingly, their take on the kappa is one of the most visually accurate I have ever seen on a Western show, while at the same time deviating sharply from the Japanese legend in terms of behavior. They actually have the bull head where it indents. I have never seen a Western show do that. However, instead of him being a polite pond monster who will disable himself by politely bowing, the show's take on the kappa is as a disgusting monster that lives in a toilet and grabs unsuspecting women by the vagina. That's not the kappa, that's the president! The setting is the campus of the fictional Wallace University, with an Animal House derivative, borderline anarchist Greek system barely associated with higher learning. Animal House is a parody of college life that is very grounded in the Vietnam era, when people of all sorts flooded college to keep from having to fight in the war. Scream Queens plays clear homage to this movie with a few gags, and retains the anarchic exaggeration of sororities and fraternities in an incongruous 2015 setting. In this way, the setting becomes a surreal Hollywood landscape, on the order of the Western's exaggeration of the American frontier. Whilst university is only nominally a functioning university, it's actually a place where rival factions run rampant, and laws are only tenuously enforced.
I have no idea how you got into this college.
Within this setting is a mean-spirited sorority called Kappa Kappa Tau, and a fraternity called the Dicky Dollar Scholar Society. Kappa Kappa Tau was originally intended to be named Kappa Nu Tau, as in K and T, as in cunt. The two organizations are then characterized as cunts and dicks, crude references to the groups of women and men as mean people and as sexual objects.
Why spin the bottle? There aren't any dickies here. I don't understand why we're playing spin the bottle. There are exactly 0 wangers here.
Fox censored that, but it's kind of a weird place to draw the line, considering how much nasty and sexual dialogue there still is in the show.
I love that your dad's so rich, and I love porking you so much.
I'd rather focus my attention this semester on getting spit roasted by hot golf rat twins than help you figure out who's murdering a bunch of dumb gashes.
You like that? I'd love having sex with your corpse.
What?
I have to wonder if it's just because this joke is classic enough for old people to recognize, while they may not recognize newer things like Eiffel Tower as a sex position, or what it implies for someone to think that Blue is the Warmest Color is the best movie of all time.
Luckiest pussy in the world.
It was a last-minute alteration, too. It got as far as a teaser. There are still remnants of the joke in the show, like signs reading, "I'm not a KKT," that would be a visual gag if it said K and T, and lingering shots of the sorority sign, as though it were leaving time for the audience to get the joke. I'm pretty sure they filmed part of the season with K and T intact. They then would have just reshot all the material with KKT. In a sense, the joke is still an integral part of the show, just censored. My opinion of the joke is that it's crude and I don't like the slur, but it's really just one of many, many rude jokes, and it's hard to single it out as uniquely objectionable. For simplicity's sake, I'll refer to it as Kappa Kappa Tau, which does have the advantage of being fun to rattle off, in the same way as Dicky Dollar Scholars. I can't imagine Kappa Nu Tau having the same appeal. Kappa Kappa Tau, Kappa Kappa Tau, Kappa Kappa Tau. Dicky Dollar Scholars, Kappa Kappa Tau. Kappa Kappa Tau is mean. I know I've said that like 5 times now, but it bears repeating. The sorority is just nasty.
Can we please get back to drinking my pooey hand water? We're going to play a game called Cocaine or Dildo.
You told me to scrub all the floors in the house with a Barbie toothbrush.
The women are mostly sociopaths, every nasty stereotype about mean popular girls and mean sororities thrown together in a big mean fruit bowl. In the inciting incident in 1995, a girl gets pregnant without realizing it, gives birth during a big party, and then dies in a bathtub because her sisters are too busy partying to help her.
That is awful.
I don't know. Supposedly it was a super fun party.
The scandal was covered up, and then 20 years later, someone decides to take revenge on the most disliked group of women ever.
Things just got interesting.
Despite being wildly unsympathetic, the sorority sisters are the main characters. The whole show revolves around them. Even when we view them antagonistically, they are our guides to the story. There are a few archetypal good characters, Grace, Pete, and Zayde, to fulfill the role of standard heroes in this kind of story, but we don't follow them as much as we do with the Mean Girls. In this way, Scream Queens resembles a crime drama, like The Godfather, putting the spotlight on malicious characters we are supposed to hate. The fact that we end up kind of loving them is testament to the powerful storytelling used in the show.
Okay, now I know you think sororities are some kind of like magical sisterhoods, but it's actually Game of Thrones once you pull back the veneer.
The show's connection to Glee is obvious, as well as to American Horror Story and Scream, but what strikes me as the closest underlying work is Game of Thrones. It has similar vicious politics of people trying to achieve power, either within groups or the groups intimidating each other as part of a larger conflict, making alliances, backstabbing, other conflicts you don't know about having a strong impact on the overall political climate, tons of characters, and the sense that anyone could die at any moment.
Your sisters are getting picked off like ducks on a pond.
I won't go.
Characters on the show drop like flies, so it makes sense that there would be an abundance of characters to populate it. Given that this is a campy horror show, most of them are sociopaths or are otherwise coded as evil, and all of them are suspicious.
Oh, y'all wretched.
The sorority president is Chanel Oberlin, played by Emma Roberts, who's kind of a cross between Cordelia Chase from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones. She is an exaggerated version of the stereotypical leader of mean popular girls, a sociopath who revels in power, calls her friends her minions, and renames them Chanel No. 2 to Chanel No. 6. This is almost certainly a reference to the movie Heathers, where the mean popular girls are all named Heather.
Now, Heather, it's Heather's turn. Heather. Sorry, Heather.
Heather number 1 just looked right at me.
The specific names are a joke referencing the perfume Chanel No. 5. Though honestly, it reminds me more of the numbered robots from Short Circuit.
Stupid, foolish, gullible, doltish, dumbbell.
Shut up, number 5.
She's a little sympathetic because at her heart, she's an insecure girl who didn't receive enough love from her parents. And she holds people at a distance because she's afraid of being hurt, but really just wants friends. Her sisters ultimately recognize this and go out of their way to be nice to her. And they sort of have a sweet friendship by the end of the season, but it's mostly just Chanel being nasty to secure her social dominance.
I'm sorry, did I ask you to pull down my panties and blow a compliment up my butt?
Well, yeah. You kinda engineer this whole hierarchy to encourage just that. As much as Chanel benefits from the hierarchy, she can never truly be satisfied in it. She wants friends, but as long as she has to fight to stay on top, she has to continuously push people away. The season finale suggests that the best thing for her is to be removed from power, because the corrupt Greek system is toxic even to her. But her personality keeps her present, always fighting for power. Oh, and she casually threatens to murder people around her. Even people she likes. She ostensibly commits manslaughter in the first episode and shows zero remorse. By all appearances, she is totally fine with killing people.
You're a psychopath, Chanel.
It's suggested early on that she might have been the one to put sulfuric acid in the former president's spray tanner to secure her position, and she is probably the number 1 suspect on the show.
Chanel, are you the killer?
I guess we'll see.
Chanel No. 2, played by Ariana Grande, is a stereotypical mean girl rival for Chanel, who doesn't make it past the first episode. She has a continued presence in the show, as the killer uses her body in a Weekend at Bernie's ploy to confuse people, and her ghost may or may not appear in one episode to mess with Chanel.
I have to pick food out of Uday and Qusay Hussein's beards with my teeth for the rest of eternity. Ew.
Chanel No. 3, played by Billie Lourd, is a serenely apathetic girl who finds comfort in her middle place in the hierarchy. High enough to condescend to people, not high enough to actually have to do anything. Billie Lourd is the daughter of Carrie Fisher, best known in her role as Princess Leia from Star Wars. And this is paid homage to by Chanel No. 3 wearing characteristic earmuffs to evoke Leia's hairstyle, which she actually dons at one point. Chanel No. 3 is secretly the daughter of Charles Manson, and she appears to have inherited his sociopathy, if not necessarily the desire to kill anyone. She might consider that too much effort.
You can sum up my viewpoint on this with one word. Indifference.
She is effectively bisexual. She becomes aware of an attraction to another sister, Sam, and this intrigues her enough to actually put in an effort to pursue it. Along with her apathy, her attraction to women becomes an iconic part of her character. In an ironic twist, her sociopathic indifference makes her one of the most respectable of the mean girls.
If you're not the killer, you should probably, give it a shot. I think you'd be pretty good at it.
Thanks.
In a cute twist, Chanel No. 4 dies of natural causes before the show begins, leaving us with Chanel No. 5, played by Abigail Breslin. Of the 4 Chanels, she takes the most abuse, and she is disadvantaged by not being a sociopath, as far as I can tell. That doesn't stop her from being aggressive from time to time, including plotting to kill Chanel, because she is that unlikable. Chanel starts a rumor that she has a vagina dentata, a la teeth. The other Chanels appear to sincerely believe it.
Yeah. Well, Chanel's a bitch who deserves whatever's coming to her.
These 4 Chanels make up the ruling class of Kappa Kappa Tau. They're an exaggerated stereotype of mean popular girls, and represent the idea that the Greek system is corrupt, elitist, and racist.
We have a side boob mixer followed by a white party, where everyone is encouraged to wear/be white.
They are opposed by Dean Kathy Munch, played by real-world Scream Queen Jamie Lee Curtis. She takes a role like that of the Dean in Animal House in wanting to shut down Kappa Kappa Tau, but she specifically has a grudge against Chanel for representing a culture that distorts the values of female power that Dean Munch fought for in the 70s as a second-wave radical feminist, which is a conflict in the real world as exemplified in the book Female Chauvinist Pigs by Ariel Levy. To get back at Chanel, the Dean makes it a requirement that Kappa Kappa Tau must accept anyone who wants to pledge, leading them to get a whole new group of quirky characters. Hester, played by Lee Michelle, a neck brace wearing obsessed Chanel fangirl. After Chanel number 2 is killed, Chanel takes off her neck brace and trains her to be a replacement mean girl as Chanel number 6. Unfortunately for Chanel, Hester is actually a psychopath with a murder fetish who wants to usurp Chanel as president and steal away her boyfriend Chad.
This one is definitely sharp enough to glide easily through roasted flesh.
What a weird way to put that.
You are so freaking creepy!
Sam, or as Chanel nicknames her, Predatory Les, played by Gianna Han, an Asian lesbian who makes a lot of the other sisters uncomfortable with her unwelcome come-ons. The one exception to this is Chanel number 3, who feels mutual attraction to her and pursues a relationship.
Soulmates.
Tiffany, played by Whitney Meyer, a hard-of-hearing woman nicknamed Deaf Taylor Swift, for a penchant of listening to Taylor Swift and singing her songs obnoxiously off-key. She doesn't last very long.
Holy crap!
Jennifer, played by Breezy Eslin, an autistic girl obsessed with candles.
I could melt them down into one large candle.
Zayday Williams, played by Keke Palmer, a black girl who wants to follow in the footsteps of Barack Obama and become President of the United States, and who will start by challenging Chanel for presidency of Kappa Kappa Tau.
What better way to knock off the competition than murder in the first?
And Grace Gardner, played by Skylar Samuels, our nominal protagonist and hero archetype. I would argue that Chanel is the real narrative protagonist, but Grace fits the standard role of a Nancy Drew character, seeking to uncover the mystery that surrounds Kappa Kappa Tau.
I want to stop these murders.
Grace tries to solve this mystery with her boyfriend, Pete Martinez, played by Diego Boneta, a sensitive barista who is also kind of a creepy character with a grudge against Chanel for framing him as a sex offender. The fact that he is not actually a sex offender is something that she freely admits to, but it goes with his creepy tone and tendency to be lit like a film noir character to give him an over-the-top creepy flamboyance on the order of Hester.
Learn to make a pumpkin spice latte, you psychopath.
And then there's Grace's father, Weston, or Wes, played by Oliver Hudson. He has some letting go issues, so when Grace goes off to college, he gets a nearby apartment and essentially stalks her to keep her safe. The dean has a creepy attraction to him, so he persuades her to make him a film teacher at the school, where he teaches the students and the audience about classic horror films. For a couple episodes, he is the theme stater.
Aren't we all running from the chainsaws in our past?
Wes enters into a relationship with Gigi, played by Nassim Pedrad, the national president of Kappa Kappa Tau, there to make sure that Chanel heeds the guidelines and keeps Dean Munch from having a reason to shut the chapter down. She is perpetually trapped in the 90s, which works because he is too.
You're so cool.
And then there's the security guard Gigi hires to protect the sorority from the Red Devil, Denise Hemphill, played by Niecy Nash, a loud, over-the-top, flamboyant, lower-class black woman.
Name one bad thing that ever happened at a Best Buy parking lot.
One amusing scene has her compete with Pete for most flamboyant one in the room.
Zayday, can I talk to you for a second? In private?
While she fits into a stereotypical comedy role, she is distinguished by being deceptively smart. All of the characters in the show are pretty stupid, but she actually displays cleverness to rival that of our nominal protagonists.
I sure do.
So when she becomes convinced that Zayday is the killer, it's worth some serious consideration. On the other hand, Zayday digs up that Denise tried to join Kappa Kappa Tau in the 1980s and was rejected because of racism, so she might have motive herself. Or maybe she was just kicked out for being too old to wear that outfit. For some reason, they make no attempt to make these characters look 20 years younger in their flashbacks.
Why are you wearing my clothes? The bigger question is, why are you the same size as a 40-year-old woman?
Denise is contrasted with Detective Chisholm, played by Jim Clock, a middle-class white cop who at first seems competent but really isn't. For one, he's been sleeping with person of interest Dean Munch. For 2, he rejects a lot of useful information, and he ends up becoming convinced that the killer is actually a ghost.
You are probably the worst cop ever.
Agatha Bean, played by Jan Hogue, is a poor, abused housekeeper whom Chanel considers effectively a slave, to the extent that she calls her White Mammy. Yeah. In an attempt to intimidate the pledges, Chanel stages a fight between them in which she dips Ms. Bean's face in the fry cooker. According to Chanel, the cooker is supposed to be off, but someone turns it on, and her face gets fried off. Oops.
If any of you ever tell, I will make sure you end up laying right next to Miss Bean in this freezer.
The Dickey Dollar Scholars Society is the male counterpart of Kappa Kappa Tau. Chanel's male counterpart is her boyfriend Chad Radwell, played by Glenn Powell, a rich, superficial jock obsessed with having as much sex as possible, with as many women as possible, and possibly also a goat.
No one forced that goat to get as drunk as it got. That's on him.
His focus on his own physical attractiveness, and making everyone around him recognize it, highlights his similarity with Chanel. He is contrasted by being a sexually sadistic necrophile, which causes conflict with Chanel, who would prefer he not picture her dead when having sex with her. Go figure. This might make Hester more compatible with him, but he also likes the stability of dating someone who wants him for his wealth, instead of fantasizing about mutilating him. He straddles the line between sympathetic and disgusting, and he's intimidating enough to suspect is the killer.
You will get murdered, P. Martinez! Murdered to death.
His best friend and roommate Boone, played by Nick Jonas of the Jonas Brothers, is revealed as gay in the second episode and attracted to Chad. Chad makes it clear that he's not interested, but Boone can't take no for an answer and keeps making creepy come-ons. In some ways, Chad is kind of a sweetheart and puts up with him more than he should. Boone's name is probably a reference to the Animal House character nicknamed Boone, as in a Boone, not the name. The Scream Queen's character just has it as its name. Boone is one of the first victims of the Red Devil, or is he?
That's a really good question.
Then there's Earl Grey, played by Lucien Laviscount, a black British guy whose main shtick is being a black British guy. He makes an alliance with Zayde to bring the two of them into power in opposing the white supremacy in the Greek system. And he confuses people with his British slang.
And I'm gonna get so pissed tonight. We plan on getting drunk, and I want your bad attitude ruining it.
Roger and Dodger, played by Austin and Aaron Rhodes, are really dorky twins engaged in a polyamorous relationship with Chanel No. 5, the two sides of the Eiffel Tower. The two actors are both gay, and this visible queerness helps create an incestuous vibe between the two of them. Finally, there's Caulfield, played by Evan Paley, a frat boy who bravely faces off against the Red Devil and is completely disarmed.
Just a flesh wound.
He manages to get on well while armless for a few episodes, until the Red Devil finishes him off. And those are just the main characters. There are a lot of them. Some of them only show up for one episode, but can still have great impact on the plot. Part of this is necessary for the format, where the killer strikes at least once every episode, but it's also true that Scream Queens just has a lot of content in it overall. It is a high-volume data show. The characters talk quickly, blasting information at us in rapid fire, telling us things verbally, while also using a lot of effective visual storytelling. It's very grounded in American culture with its use of the English language and pop culture references. And I imagine people non-native to the US, or for whom English is a second language, would have a harder time understanding it.
Oh my god, I'm burping uncontrollably like Robert Durst!
Even born and raised Americans might have difficulty keeping everything straight with the murder mystery and various points of drama, but I think the writing quality is so good that it's readily understandable based on context, even if some of the smaller points go over people's heads. In a way, it's the creative descendant of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. We don't think about it much, but there are a lot of characters in that movie. 4 tall people, 7 dwarfs, a magic mirror, not to mention a bunch of fuzzy wuzzies, and their scary counterparts. Really, a lot of characters. And yet, the storytelling allows us to understand these characters pretty much right away. It's that kind of storytelling, spread out through several episodes and given a more complicated plot, which I will get into in the next part.